Hi, I'm Andrea Capere, and you're watching Mission Nonprofit. Each month, we connect with local organizations and agencies that are making a positive impact in our communities. It's April, and for those of us in Thurston County, that means it's time for the Procession of the Species. We're here with Eli Sterling, Director of Earthbound Productions and creator of the Procession, an annual celebration of the diversity of life on our planet and a call to protect our environment. Hi, Eli. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrea. Thanks very much. I have to say I enjoyed that little intro there and seeing all those faces, seeing all my other colleagues up on the screen. So it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thanks for coming, and thank you. And this is not your first time on the show, right?
Well, it's my first time on Mission Nonprofit, but
Okay.
not my first time on television, that's for sure. Certainly have a good history here with TCTV. Was even the board president there for a while.
Great. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
So just to back up, not a lot of people know that the Procession is a project of Earthbound Productions. Can you tell us about Earthbound and the mission of the organization?
Great. Yeah, that's true. I mean, by design, the Procession of the Species or Procession of the Species celebration is, as we say, is by the community for the community. But in all of those contexts, there has to be some organization, some person who's front and center to get yelled at, and also to manage any of these large endeavors. There's a lot of fiscal responsibilities, and then a lot of social contracts in a sense that you have with the community. So Earthbound Productions actually is a federal nonprofit organization. It was actually sort of derived out of my time here in TCTV. For 5 years, I produced a television show called Earthbound with the little moniker Earthbound Productions, in the credits beneath that. And its design was always to try to investigate how we've separated our policy from our culture. So it was a live call-in talk show for environmental concerns, but always in that say, okay, what's going on with the policy part of it? And then after several years, it became pretty clear to me that, wow, we're not gonna get the message through media alone. That there has to be something in a large cultural significance, not just a policy orientation, but a cultural orientation. And in that regards, there came the Procession. So through Earthbound Productions, we made an invitation to the community, say, hey, what about this idea, this thing called Procession? And there's an amazing crew of people showed up, about 30 core people, and then it was on its way.
Fantastic. So I don't live in Thurston County. I've actually never seen the Procession of the Species. How would you describe it to me as someone who's never seen the event? A
question I'm frequently asked, but it is amazing, I think, in that terms of success that we have. Oftentimes people will not admit that they haven't seen it. You're a very brave person. They'll say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with it. But when someone says, I'm familiar with it, I know, oh, they've never seen it. Because there is a delight, there's a genuine sense of warmth that arises with the procession. Now, it's not that the procession itself is so extraordinary in its components. It's something clearly that thrives on the level of acceptance that exists there. So you're looking at a cultural phenomena that, if we think about parades, we do call this a procession in the context that when you conquer your parade, now not every parade is about conquering, but when you think about that, Roman legions coming in, everyone kind of shows up with their hands in the air. Or after the Super Bowl, it's a big parade, the conquerors return. But when you are liberated, you process. And in many ways, we say that's, you just think of the streets just filled up with banners and people waving towels and T-shirts and flags. Oh my gosh, it's that beauty of exuberance. So think of the difference between a parade going down the street, and then the people on the sidewalk inside. So the procession is designed to really advance the people on the sidewalk. It's not that you don't need both, and aren't they really wonderful, but there is a reason why we call something a funeral procession and not a funeral parade, because it's not about you personally, it's about something larger than you. And that's where the procession resides in its true colorful art forms. So it is a pageant, a huge colorful pageant where people dress up in various costumings of endangered species or animal creatures or connections, plants and animals, fauna, that really sort of engages and enhances their own kinship with the natural world. So it would be not unlike what we visualize, something you see moving through those movie scenes that we see of old Europe, right? That sort of minstrel type of look. But it isn't segmented with names. It isn't segmented with displays, corporate displays. It really, literally is a procession. We sort of line up, we organize around the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And then on the day of, just when we're getting ready to go, we kind of flip a coin as to see which elements are going to go first, and then we just usher ourselves through the streets. And what you witness is just the colorful joy that people experience once they have given witness to their own creative spirit. So it's a long, intricate process with art studios and such, but it is one that is designed on a cultural level to engage people's level of acceptance.
You had mentioned there's no big corporate displays, and that kind of brings me back to those 3 rules of the procession. Can you explain the meaning behind the rules, what the rules are, and why they're in place?
Yes. Those are, and it's an essential component for what the whole procession is. It's really simple. There are no written words, right? And the emphasis on no spoken words in the procession. And there are no motorized vehicles, or emphasis of no motors, so that can't have boom boxes, but it's certainly for someone and people in wheelchairs, that's absolutely appropriate. And then there are no live animals. We ride on the backs of our pets. I mean, if you think about it, the pet industry is a billion-dollar industry, the 3rd, 4th highest money-making industry in the United States, and yet we're not saving our environment. So there's a tendency for us to sort of separate ourselves from that kinship with the earth through this kinship of other living life, which is fantastic. The same with you do with our gardens, but it doesn't help us if it's just spread out with Roundup, right? It's in those relationships. So the procession is designed, okay, let's step a little bit away from that, still keep us as human beings in the center, but develop that kinship with the world that's outside the human dynamic. So it sort of takes away our words, our motors, and our pets, and pretty much we're on our own after that.
And so you had mentioned community involvement. Can you tell me how the community gets involved in the procession?
It is for us. The procession has a cultural dynamic, right? And so for us, it's not a directive; it's an invitation. And so for us, and all of us at Earthbound Productions, who actually are the production crew behind organizing this procession, it's an invitation to simply say that you are welcome. And so what we do to engage that is for 7 full weeks in advance of the procession, we locate an empty warehouse in downtown Olympia, and we invite the public to come in for free. There is certainly requests for donations, but we know also, people are in the idea of going into art is a little bit handicapped, both in the idea that I can actually do something, and let alone can actually maybe sometimes afford it when I have numerous kids. But we do set up these art studios with numerous workshops which will help people with this idea that, hey, yeah, I can actually use an artistic, whether it's music through music or dance, or actually using batik or paper mache, cultivate this idea that I can contribute not only to, it's almost like a big graffiti project. I can contribute to my own personal identity, but then can take that out into the streets on Procession Day and then contribute to the identity of my community. Now, you don't have to participate in any of the studios. That's just to help people along. The goal is that you'll turn your garage into a neighborhood whale-making class. So your whole neighborhood association comes over to your rotating garages or basements for people to actually create that work at home, but develop that community. Say, yeah, it isn't. Now, does making a life-size 32-foot whale save the whales? No, but what it will do is it cultivates your instinctive visual relationship that says, I see that article in the paper. I see that request to show down. I see that congressman saying, or congresswoman saying, hey, I need some feedback. Do you want to save? And I say, yes, because one of the basic tenets of the procession is that we are far more willing to protect that which we create versus that which we consume. And so the goal of the procession is to put people in those sort of creative relationships. Because once you've created something, there's this huge desire to share. Like, look, Mom, no hands. And so when you share with someone, kind of puts you in a little bit of a vulnerable space that, yeah, I'm willing to do this. Well, the cool thing about the procession is I'm sharing what I've created, but I'm sharing it in a thematic relationship to something that's larger than me. And so I can be out in the street in something that so it's a paper bag that looks like a frog head. But I'm not embarrassed. It's like, wow, I'm excited to be there. And then that's what happens is that when people witness the procession, and it's difficult for me to describe, because what you're really witnessing is the joy someone else is sharing for what they did, and what they're witnessing, and you're witnessing across the street when you see other people, is pure acceptance. Again, those three rules. One of the real reasons why we don't have written words is that certainly people think that it makes it safe politically, but there's some practical functional reasons too. And one of those is if I don't have a particular identity with a name, but my identity is joy, when I'm in the audience, I can't actually pick or choose. I have to accept it all. Now, I may not like that procession. It looks like, oh my God, it's a bunch of funky people running around with frog heads on their head. But in many ways, it's just like what you're doing, though, when it all comes down, you only have one opportunity to sort of, well, what do I do with it? And typically that opportunity is, if it's not tears, it's just acceptance and joy that, wow, this is a great place to live.
Well, speaking of those frog heads, we do have a great video of behind the scenes at the art studio while people are working on their installations for this year's procession. And so let's take a look at the Community Arts Studio.
Back at TCTV in the early 90s, they had a show called Earthbound, and we did 5 years of television shows, and then from that, actually came the Procession of the Species. So anyway, we created a public art studio, free and open to the community for now 20 years. So come on inside and I'll show you what it looks like. Batik is a process of taking hot wax and putting that onto a fabric, a jaunting tool. It's almost like a quill of a pen, and then that gets drawn onto a piece of fabric. And the beautiful thing is that with batik, you'll see the wax kind of bleeding out and kind of being a little bit fluid and rough and tumble. When I go to place color on this fabric, this wax will prevent the color from seeping from one side to the other. So in this cosmic carrot, this will be a dark blue here, and wherever there's wax, it's going to be white, and then there'll be this sort of orange yellowish glow here, carrot on this side. And just like leaded stained glass, this wax here will prevent those two colors from joining. Here where the wax is on the side here, and you can see there's a color of the yellow and blue on this tree design and on this flower design. So literally, the cool thing is that anybody can learn how to do this. You actually become almost like a stained glass window artist that you could see in any of the finest cathedrals. The luminary process, a little bit more complex than the batiking, but in every type of art form that we teach at the Procession, all of it, we don't try to cut corners, don't try to make something that is just simple and quick and hasty. We're far more willing to protect that which we create versus that which we consume, and other things that we just sort of pick and choose. But when you're the creator, there's just that great sense of pride. But it also cultivates, again, that sort of internal self-expression of kind of giving witness to your own creative spirit and going like, wow, this is amazing. And what do you want to do when that happens? You want to share it. And if you look down this aisle here, you can see some of the luminaries that we've made through the years, and they are pretty fragile, and once they're out in a procession they get damaged, so they get taken back in. Here's a set of people who've just made their first set of stars. In that great beautiful place of art, in these fabric pieces, is that you can create, excuse me for this time here, you can create these actually amazing waistbands and dance down the street as a flower. But it is, again, so this wire actually came from an old roll of fence wire. This is fabric that's just out of the Goodwill, a little bit of ribbon. and there you are. You're in the natural world.
That looks.
Okay. Well, there it is. It's a small portion of the studio there, that's for sure. But there's a lot going on, and it is really, really delightful. And of course, if I happen to be there, you will get a little bit of profession philosophy along with it.
And that looks so fun, and that's amazing. What have been some of your favorite creations over the years?
Well, there are dozens and dozens, because it's the imagination people have. For me as an organizer, there's this sort of we sort of are inspired by what we see. And so someone starts a project, and then other people sort of jump on, and we kind of go through that for a couple of years. Like one time we had stilts, like, okay, we're just doing stilts, and there's tons of stilts. We used to do, one time we thought, oh, hey, maybe we can make stilts into 5-gallon buckets. And that went okay, but not great. So then the sort of stilts kind of faded out. We were in different art studios. We used to have big doors, which could make large stuff. But then one time we were only in a regular double door that was 8 foot wide at the sort of at the diameter. So we went into this whole genre of pull carts, which was what we had used to kind of. So now we kind of pull things versus these sort of larger types of like innovative stuff. But for me, where my heart really resides is in the community bands. So when we first began the procession, for me, it was very, very clear that the only way it would survive for 20 years, the procession was designed actually to last for 20 years, one generation. We broke it into 4 5-year groupings. The first grouping was called, the first 5 years we called that the year of the mask, the next the year of the dance, the next the year of the voice, and the last 5, the year of the heart. And in that context, I understood, the group of us understood that it would only survive that 20 years on its music, not on its art. Because the procession is an adult-driven event. We have this expression of, you don't see, if kids don't grow up wanting to be 13. So if they don't see someone at 22 and 35 and 56 and 89 doing it, nothing's going to change. They know they're supposed to tell mom and dad you have to recycle when they're in grade school. The question is, what do they know when they get their first driver's license? And so you need to know, and as a culture you need to know what it is that happens as adults. And so in that context, one of the ways to keep adults in the mix and in the flow is through music. So the very first year we got a little samba band together, and they gelled. It was immediate. There was a guy named Scott Saunders, and there was John Ridgway, Jeff Johns, a number of people. Now it's Julie Kellen, David Mosley, and then Steve Passero, and with the dancing. They have kept Samba Oliwa as sort of the major piece that comes in the very end of the procession as a real own community band throughout the years. But then since that time, we've had a group called Drum Fund that stays every year, and there was Planet Percussion. There's the Raven Drummers, and a number of groups. There's Artesian Orchestra, Rumble. So for me, it's just the different small community bands that have grown up, the different dance groups that have grown up with this inspiration of participating in the procession and then hanging out year round and then doing things for other groups. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it's not just Samba doing this or Crow Drummers actually doing on the procession. These community bands, Artesian Orchestra Rumble, which you can see every Friday at Percival Landing, they go out into the community and help support other groups. So for me, yeah, my heart is definitely with the music groups. But other than that, it is these, we've recently had a new artist join us the last 5 years, a guy named Jerry Berbitsky, but he's making these huge, large, 20-foot high sort of puppets, whether they're elephants or giraffes or peacocks. Those things are very exciting. But there's also kids making their first frog mask with adults, and seeing a parent and adult get in the same costume together. Maybe that's the most touching thing.
So is all the music acoustic?
Yeah, so all the music is acoustic. There isn't any amplification. So there's a lot of drumming, a lot of taking walk pans, walk the lids off walk heads and isn't. But yes, so you're using a lot of brass instruments. We used to have Joe Mailhot did great. He was the first one to bring in, to kind of rally all those people that used to play in the high school band, and you still had that clarinet someplace, and come on out if you can read music. It was a kind of a new idea. And so it was just people who could read music, but that he would work with them, and then they would create all this sort of phenomenal music. So it's that goal of almost sort of reclaiming stuff that you did in your past life, and then bringing that forward into, again, a relevance that says, this is who we are. In many ways, there's been over 20 years, you can imagine, there's a lot of context in which the procession has had to exist. I mean, starting in 1995, it was a clear cultural stance against a different cultural stance which was emerging in the country. That was Newt Gingrich, who was reemerged politically, but he was making a call for the contract of America to dismantle the Endangered Species Act. And that was a Republican act. I mean, that was back in the era of President Nixon. And Earth Day was in 1970. These were long historical standing decisions that people had worked on. And yet they become these sort of target points. And so the procession, with myself, and we said, we're going to double down on this idea that you can stand up for this stuff, that this is real. I mean, you can talk about job losses and stuff, but to be honest, the Endangered Species Act had nothing to do with Enron, which decimated the lives of many. Had nothing to do with kicking people out of their mortgages on their house in these last bubble. They didn't have EPA didn't have anything to do with that. So there's this idea of targeting things, which in the natural world or the environment, with sort of some other sort of social dynamics, which had actually served a small portion of the people. They try to target these things which belong to everyone. I mean, the miracle of nature, this kinship with the earth, belongs to all of us, and we're constantly being told that someone's trying to talk us out of that kinship. And the procession through all the years said, no, you're not going to talk this community out of that conversation of kinship with the earth. It doesn't mean there aren't other practical functions on how we survive, but you're not going to talk us out of a kinship with this miracle of life.
So with just a few minutes left, can you tell me what is special about this year? Why should people attend this year to see the procession and to participate in particular?
This is, it's an incredible year to have to participate. This is clearly a year where there's a revigoration, an invigorating, a revitalization, if you will, of having a public presence. And for the procession, when we started in 1995, our mission was not environmental per se. The mission was to elevate the dignity of the human spirit by enhancing the cultural exchange between communities and the natural world, and to do that through a process of imagination, creation, and sharing. But it is to elevate the dignity of the human spirit. Now, it's a much longer lecture about how to unpack dignity of human spirit, but that is the amazing goal. So having a cultural conviction, not just a cultural connection with nature, but a cultural conviction with the kinship, that is what we're aiming for this year. That's the revitalization. That's what we're asking people. We've been around 20 years, kind of take things for granted, this is just not a new political phenomenon we're experiencing this year. Or I would even say a cultural phenomenon. I don't really look at what's going on the political landscape as something separate than what we are culturally. So, yeah, we take things for granted. The EPA showed up when rivers were on fire in 1969, right? So we've evolved, and so we sort of get a little sleepy there. We're blessed with the great abundance of natural beauty we have in this country right now and in our area. But the procession is about, that kinship needs to be focused, up, present, and in full acceptance of each other. That's how it's going to work, acceptance of each other.
Great. And can you remind our audience when the procession is taking
place?
Okay,
so we are part of Arts Walk Weekend. So it's kind of a collaboration of just what Arts Walk is wonderful because it brings art, expression of art and businesses together. We're part of that Arts Walk dynamic because also the environmental community needs to recognize itself in the context of what a thriving business community would be as well. And these aren't opposed. The economy and the environment are not, they're not at loggerheads. They have a very huge symbiotic relationship. So Arts Walk Weekend is on the 28th and 29th of April. We have a luminary procession that begins at 9:30 on Friday night, the element of spirit, the fifth element of spirit. And then we have our 4 elements of earth showing up at 4:30 on Saturday, all in downtown Olympia. If you get near Sylvester Park, you're not going to miss it. And then in one other context of that, actually, on this April 1st, there is or will or has been a rally at the Capitol steps announcing an Earth Month. And so the procession will sort of be that culmination ending to what will be a whole array of activities by many, many environmental organizations out here. So while we are focused on the procession today, it really is, it's in a sister and brotherhood with a huge dynamic force of environmental activism and desire. And so you will see earth flags all through the month, up and down Capitol Way, throughout the month of April, as a means of saying, you know what, as my friend Dave Sederberg, who started this whole process, one day is not enough, so it's out for Earth Month. So.
Well, fantastic. It sounds like a great event, and I look forward to seeing my very first procession this year.
Well, come by the studio. I hope to see you down there too as well. And again, the studio, you can go to procession.org, and you can get a list of, you'll see our webpage, but you'll see a space right on the top. Hey, these are the workshops. Click on that. There's a calendar. Shows all the different workshops that are going on. You're welcome to come down. Many of them are free. Some you have to pay for materials. A luminary is definitely a cool thing, but it is a little bit more pricey because of the rice paper, mulberry paper that we use. But it is authentic luminary stuff. But you're welcome to swing on in and just ask questions. Just poke in to say hi, stroll a little bit around, and be delighted.
Well, thank you for joining us today. That's all we have for this episode. You can see Mission Nonprofit on Comcast Channel 77 and Fairpoint Channel 23 on Sundays at 4:30 p.m., Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 7:30 p.m., and Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. You can also catch us online at tcmedia.org. See you next time, and thanks for watching.